All right, welcome into the Warchant.com Top 40, the original Top 40 as it's known around these parts. It's part two, in fact. We'll take a look at 30 through 21, players 30 through 21. Joining us now, Corey Clark, of course. I'm still Jeff, that's still Gene. Let's do this. And some guys here, as we look at the composite list, that really stand out. I think we got to start with something that, quite frankly, is the most polarizing player on the list, clearly. A guy that Ira Scheffel, who's not here to defend himself, didn't even have on the list, and that Corey Clark thinks is one of the best players in the country. Juwan Williams is that man at number 26. Thoughts?
Well, I had him at 12, which I apparently, looking at everybody's list, might have been a touch too high. But I mean, I do think he's talented. Yeah, a little scotch too high, a smidge. He's talented if he's healthy. That's kind of an if, right? That's kind of an if.
So, all right. So you got questions about his health.
He's a starting tackle. That's an important part of the offense, guys. He's an important part of the offense. And I wouldn't say he's one of the best players in the country, but I do think he'll probably win the Outland. I mean, he'll probably win the Outland. And Florida State's never had an Outland Trophy winner, I don't think. So there you go.
Well, if he starts, isn't that kind of the thing? Because and also to sit for Ira.
And this is why we might have had him ranked lower, is that there's a question about whether or not he'll even start.
But if he does, guys, if he does, hold on to your.
Oh my goodness!
George Campbell starts. He's number 3 on the list.
Yeah. Did Corey have him hit 3? All right. So your thoughts on any of these guys? If you want to expound on Juwan Williams, by all means. But I think DeKellen Brooks stands out.
Well, yeah. I'm very interested to see how that's going to play out, because here's a guy who's a classic tweener, but in this system, that star, and he looked great in the spring, and the coaches couldn't stop raving about him. But my question on that is a little bit when I talked to Willie Taggart down in Tampa before his tour. And I talked about that position, and he says it's very similar to kind of what Florida State ran before. You really need kind of a defensive back, a 5th defensive back to do that. And then he also threw, and I was a little surprised, Jaden Woodby is a guy who would be playing that position, which seems a little bit more traditional when you're talking about the guys who played there in the past, who are typically physical defensive backs playing that position. I just wonder with these teams running a spread and a lot of receivers if DeKellen is really going to be a good fit for that or not. So that's why I didn't have him quite as high. I think he's definitely a contributor. He's going to be good, but I really wonder if he's going to be an every down starter.
Well, home run threat is LeBourne, obviously. A lot of people very excited about him. I'll let you expound upon him or anybody else on this list. But again, I continue to talk about Florida State's depth at running back. Yeah,
I struggled with LeBourne. I think I had him in the top 20, maybe top 25, but I think it was, I don't know how many carries he's going to get. Obviously, you got one of the best, you really do have one of the best players in the country in Cam Akers in front of him. And I think Jacques has a real role on this team, a real role. And I think he's going to get a lot of carries in short yards. He's going to get a lot of carries around the goal line. I also think he's a very good college football player. So it's not like I expect LeBourne to get 18 or 20 carries a game. So how much impact is he going to make on a game if he's getting 6 or 8? That's why maybe I didn't have him as high as maybe his talent warrants.
Points well taken with the Jacques Patrick in the red zone. I agree with that, inside the 10 especially. But when you're thinking about this offense running at pace, spread, you see a home run hitter in LeBourne that you don't have in Patrick. And obviously, I think in that sense, we're going to see some big playability from him this year. He's a guy that if he makes somebody miss, you're watching an 80-yard touchdown.
Yeah, and I think I had him lower than anybody on the list because I just don't know. He had one 90-yard run in the spring game, didn't play last year. He's what, co-third string probably running back right now. So I don't know, but you're right. He is a great fit for this system, and if he does, definitely pass Rasul. And like you said, Patrick maybe doesn't get a whole lot of carries. Maybe he gets the second most carries, and if that's the case, then I probably would have to bump him up more around 20 than where I had now at 37. So, but I mean, there's just so many players at running back, it's really hard to judge.
If you'll note this section of the list, which you guys have seen now, but Bavion Johnson, offensive lineman, obviously Fred Jones, defensive lineman. You're looking at Wally Amy, defensive lineman. You got Juwan Williams, offensive lineman. Cole Minshew, offensive lineman. You're looking at offensive and defensive linemen primarily in this grouping, and these are all guys that you could make great arguments for should be higher in a sense because you've got to win the trenches.
You do, Jeff. That's what I've always said about football. It's trench warfare down there, man. If you don't win the trenches, what are you doing?
Glad we've got you on.
What would Ira have added to that right there? That I inserted that goal. No, of course not. Of course not.
Up a very valid point.
But like, you know, Bavion, I mean, is he maybe the most talented offensive lineman? I mean, is he? He might be up with Landon Dickerson, but again, does he start? I mean, because he's not starting at center. You got a redshirt senior there. You've got 2 guards in Minshew and Dickerson, so where's he going to play? But, I mean, in terms of talent, he'd probably be higher on the list. but he's probably your primary backup of those 3 interior spots.
We haven't mentioned really outside of DeKalen Brooks, I guess, really kind of a linebacker here, and rounding out that list was Josh Brown. And looking at the various players on this list, we also had another one in Emmett Rice. I know we don't want to go through everybody, but anybody you want to add to this as we wrap up?
I mean, I think Emmett Rice is intriguing, man. I know that Jimbo loved him when he signed him and compared him to Telvin Smith. Now, I think part of that is body type, but also I think he's a supremely talented guy, or Jimbo thought he was a supremely talented guy. And I think he's a guy, if he's healthy, man, I think he can make a difference and he can make an impact, and they expect him to. But will he? He hasn't yet. And that's always the deal, man. When do these guys step up and actually make an impact? Same thing with, is it DeKalen? Is that what we're going with? DeKalen? I always want to call him Decalon, but it's DeKalen.
Well, I understand why you would want to call him Decalon, but his name is DeKalen.
Decalon's a pretty
But that's a really
name.
Cool name if you play linebacker in space.
But it's crazy that there's so many linebackers that we have on the list. I mean, we have probably 4 or 5 linebackers on this list, and which one of these guys, not all of them are going to be important, because they're not going to be playing that many linebackers, but which one of these guys really step up? I like both those guys, and I think both those guys have a chance to make plays.
Florida State fans just want to see a level of elite play at the linebacker position that they haven't seen in a long time, so one of these guys obviously is going to have to step up. Now we get into the upper echelon when we come back on the next Warchant.com Top 40.